Hey there, Algebra 2 students. Welcome back to Miss McGuire's classroom. I'm Miss McGuire, and today we're going to be doing Unit 3, Lesson 8. So today's topic is solving polynomial functions by factoring part 2. And that should sound like good news because this is the second day that we're doing solving by factoring, which means this is kind of a review day. We're applying it to some more complicated problems, but luckily we're not really learning anything new. It's just kind of like an extra practice lesson. You'll see what I'm talking about. Hey, don't forget to put your first and last name in the top right-hand corner of this page, along with the period and the date, please. Appreciate it. So today's objective is I will solve degree 2 polynomial functions by factoring. So let's roll up our sleeves and dive right in. So our directions, of course, are solve the quadratic function by factoring. I've got our steps listed out. They're the same steps from lesson 7. So again, nothing's changed in the steps. We're just applying it to some more difficult problems. So our very first step is always make sure the equation equals 0. Remember, when we're solving quadratic functions, what we're really doing is finding the x-intercepts or the zeros. And when we find x-intercepts, y is always 0. So we want the equation to be equal 0. In other words, y would be 0 then. So 3x squared plus 72 equals 33x. This is equal to 33x, but I need it to be equal to 0. Well, what if I subtract 33x to both sides? Then the right side, 33x minus 33x is 0. And 3x squared wouldn't change. Negative 33x would be its own term. It can't be combined with anything else. And then we also have plus 72. So now the equation is 3x squared minus 33x plus 72. Now the first thing I want to do is see if I have a GCF that I can factor out of this polynomial in step 2 when I start factoring. So we have, let's see if we can bring a 3 out here. So 3 times x squared, 3 times negative 11x, and then 3 times would be 2, would be 6, so 12, 4. Oh, duh, there's 72 hours and 3 days. 24. Don't tell anyone, I had to divide that. Okay, so now we need to factor x squared minus 11x plus 24. So from here, we're gonna have a 3 times. So the factors of 24, 1 times 24 would be 24. The factors of 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. The factors that add or subtract to give us that negative 11 would be 3 and 8. So we're gonna have x squared, 3x, 8x, and 24. I need both of these to be negative for us to get negative 11x when we combine them. Then we're gonna have 3 times, I'm gonna put x squared minus 3x in parentheses. I'm going to put a plus sign and then negative 8x plus 24 in parentheses equals 0. And I am out of room. Whose idea was it to put this in such a tiny space? All right, I'm gonna bring this work up here actually. So x squared minus 3x have an x in common, so I'm going to factor that out. So I'm going to have 3 times, I'm bringing out an x here, and I'm going to have x minus 3 left. Negative 8x plus 24, the first term is negative, so I'm going to factor out a negative 8. That's not going to work. I'm going to write sideways. So 3 times, I factor out an x, so I had x minus 3. I'm factoring out a negative 8. I'm going to have x minus 3. And it still equals 0. Make sure you have equals 0 at each step. Then we're going to have 3 times. Because our parentheses match, we're ready to factor. So x minus 0, x minus 3 is one of the factors. And then x minus 8 is the last factor. So we have 3 times x minus 8 times x minus 3. I'm glad I caught that. That should be x minus 3 equals 0. Now, notice the very first factor is a 3. We factor out a 3 from the whole equation. Does that 3 have an x attached to it? No, it doesn't. That means that this isn't one of our x-intercepts. This 3 is kind of just hanging out here. It doesn't impact our x-intercepts. It's not necessarily helping us. In fact, what we can do is we can divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So then we're left with x minus 8 times x minus 3. 0 divided by 3 is 0. So we're able to divide that 3 out on both sides, cancel it. We don't even have to deal with it anymore. Now, set each factor equal to 0. So x minus 8 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0. Solve for x. So set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. Should be all of step 3 here. Looks like I forgot that part. Okay, so we're going to add 8 to both sides. We get x equals 8. We're going to add 3 to both sides. X equals 3. Now this is where I get picky, remember? I make you write your answers as x-intercepts and zeros. I also expect you to label them as x-intercepts and zeros. So our x-intercepts, you're going to label your x-intercepts, would be 8, 0 and 3, 0. And then your zeros are x equals 8, 3. So 8 and 3. Notice, please notice, this is something else I'm really picky about, and I hope you're paying attention. Notice I put colons here. I did not put equal signs. Please, I saw this mistake happen a lot while I was looking back at your extra practice from Tuesday and Monday. Kids put equal signs here. Your x-intercepts don't equal an equation. They are points. So you represent them or you list them at following a colon. It's kind of like proper English, but in math. Our zeros, we've already got an x-intercept over here. We don't need an equal sign over here. We don't need an extra equal sign. Put colons, please. So write x-intercepts colon 8, 0, 3, 0. Zeros colon x equals 8, 3. All right. Thank you very much for coming to my TED Talk. Moving on. So let's do one more example. So part B. X squared equals negative 18 minus 9x. So step 1, make the equation equal to 0. There are 2 ways you can do this. 1, you could move the x squared to the right side, or you can move the negative 18 and the negative 9 to the other side. I prefer moving the negative 18 and the negative 9x, so we don't have to deal with a negative x squared. So let's add 18 and add 9x to both sides. And we get x squared plus 9x plus 18 equals 0. Step 2, factor the problem. So take 1 times 18, which is 18. The factors of 18 are 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Pick those factors, rewrite it so you have 4 terms, factor by grouping. Go ahead and factor this on your own when you're done. So press pause, then when you're done, press play and check and see if we factored it the same way. Go for it. All right, so the factors I got are x plus 3 times x plus 6 equals 0. Step 3, set each factor equal to 0 and then solve for x. Then in step 4, you're going to write your final answer as x-intercepts and zeros. Go ahead and press pause and then press play when you're ready to check your work. Give it a shot on your own. All right, so as you can see from my work, I ended up getting x equals negative 3 and x equals negative 6. I wrote my final answers as x-intercepts with colons and zeros with colons. I got negative 3, 0, negative 6, 0 for my x-intercepts, and then x equals negative 3 and negative 6. All right, so why don't you go ahead and try a problem all on your own. Make sure you go through all 4 of those steps. Don't forget to write your answers in 2 ways, your x-intercepts and your zeros. Press pause and then press play when you're ready to check your work. Go ahead and give it a shot. You got this. All right, so as you can see for my work, I went ahead and added 35x to both sides. I got 7x squared plus 35x minus 42 equals 0. I noticed I had a GCF of 7. I factored that out, and then I divided both sides by 7 at that step so I could just get rid of it and not have to deal with it anymore. Then I factored x squared plus 5x minus 6. I got x plus 6 times x minus 1 equals 0. Of course, I have x equals 0 at every single step. And then I set x plus 6 equal to 0. I set x minus 1 equal to 0, solved for x, and got -6 and +1. I rewrote my final answers as x-intercepts and as zeros. And there you go. Hopefully, your answers match mine. All right, why don't you go ahead and do part D by yourself as well. -4x squared plus 6x minus 16 equals -5x squared. And before you get started on this, just a heads up, we are going to add an extra problem, part E, after this. So make sure you watch the Edpuzzle all the way through the end for that extra problem. All right, go ahead and make this function equal 0, factor it, and solve for your x's. Make sure you write your final answers as x-intercepts and zeros. Press pause, then press play when you're ready to check your work. See you on the other side of this problem. All right, let's compare our work. So the first thing I did was added 5x squared to both sides, and something nice happened. -4x squared plus 5x squared is 1x squared. Super easy to factor. So I got x squared plus 6x minus 16 equals 0. I was able to factor it to be x minus 2 times x plus 8 equals 0. Then I set each factor equal to 0, solved for x in each. Then I rewrote my answers, of course, as x-intercepts and zeros. All right, so let's do one more problem. So part E, we have 6x squared plus x minus 1 equals 0. The function's already equal to 0 for us. Go ahead and try factoring it on your own. Press pause, press play when you're ready to check your factoring. All right, so when you factored it, you should have gotten 2x plus 1 times 3x minus 1 equals 0. So now we do the same steps. We set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. So we're going to take 2x plus 1, set that equal to 0, and 3x minus 1, and set that equal to 0. Now solve for x. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to subtract 1 from both sides over here, and we're going to get 2x is equal to -1. Divide both sides by 2, and we get x is equal to -1/2. I want you to leave these answers as fractions. Leave them as fractions. Fractions are okay. We're not scared of fractions in Algebra 2. Go ahead and solve for x in the second one. So I added 1 to both sides. I divided by 3. I got x equals 1/3. So even though our answers are fractions, we still write our final answer as x-intercepts and as zeros. So we get -1/2 0, 1/3 0 for our x-intercepts, and we get x equals -1/2 and 1/3 for our final answers. So we did this example just to show that sometimes you will not get a whole number or an integer for your answers for your x-intercepts, and that's perfectly fine. It's okay to get a fraction. It's okay to cross the x-axis at a decimal. It's perfectly fine. All right. So go ahead and do your extra practice, and I'll see you guys back in class. Have a great day.